My mother had two sisters, whose name I've written.
Yeah.
Dayavanti and Lajavanti.
Yeah.
And my mother was the youngest.
Did you meet her sisters over
Yes,
time?
both.
Both, good.
No, not Dayavanti. Lajavanti very well.
Okay.
Lajavanti, if you do remember Prem Praji, the man who...
Yep.
She's Prem Praji's and Kripal's mother.
Okay, that's right.
And she was very, very fond of me.
Yeah.
And because I was very young.
Yeah.
Whatever. And no, there was another reason. Dad had died very early.
Okay.
So, and I was topping the younger classes, and that suddenly had everybody's eyes were set on me.
Good.
Who would later on go and look after his mother.
Yeah.
Old,
So tell us about BBG.
yeah. BBG was the third and the youngest daughter.
Yeah.
And she was very fond of studying. And her mother, however, Siddharth Bahadur Bishan Singh's wife, Dayavanti, she was, not Dayavanti, I forgot her name, she was very old-fashioned lady. So BBG was constantly, because she was living she was growing up in university or Khalsa College atmosphere, she started studying very seriously. And her mother was very old-fashioned, and she raised loud noise, whatever.
Yeah, a stink, I understand.
Went and fought with her husband and said, who will marry her? You are educating her so much that there will not be a man who will be able to compete with her, and you want to keep her at home as an unmarried,
Yeah, and it's a spinster or whatever, yeah.
So she was withdrawn from school because, however strong a personality my Nanaji, my grandfather was, mother said he was like a wet cat when faced by his wife.
Yeah.
He just wanted peace at home, and
Yeah.
he was not willing to do
Sure.
anything. So inside the home, his wife, who was contrary to him, completely uneducated, she could not even read Punjabi, let alone anything else, he would just then give up.
Yep.
So then he said to her, I think supposedly only once, so what do you want her to do? And she was at that time 15 or 14 years old. So she said, I will find a way. Now BBG had an older sister. She was the oldest sister. Her name was, she was not the old, no, she was not the old, it was Dayavanti.
Okay.
Dayavanti was the mother of Mrs. B.D. Gaur.
Yeah.
Mrs. Gaur. And you were not there, but the other aunt that I had, Chachaji's wife, that was, we called her Bansi Benji.
Mm-hmm.
So Bansi Benji and Anand, Mrs. Gaur, they had lost their mother at a very, very young age when they were 3 years old or 5 years old. And when they died, the husband, he came one day with those two girls and dumped them at his grandparents, at his in-laws' place, and said, I have no woman to bring them up.
Yep.
You take care of them, and went away. Now, Sardar Bahadur Bishan Singh, the grandfather, he was not very enamored of that, but he was like a wet cat or a chicken when, as far as his wife was concerned. So the wife saw that and she said, that is a God-sent gift. So she made BBG, who was herself just a young girl of 16 or 17 years old, or 14, I don't know.
Yep.
What. She declared her to be the mother of these two little infants.
It's a good way to keep people too busy to study, so yeah.
That was her whole game. And so later on, Peelu's mother and Asha Mira's mother, they told me those stories.
Sure.
They said we used to just hang on to her chunni, and wherever she went, we would go behind her. So it was my mother then she was, relatively speaking, of course, educated compared to her mother. She started teaching them English and Punjabi.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That is how they got their taste for language. But my mother's education was abruptly stopped at that age, at first. And so they grew up, and the reason I am so close, or was, to Asha Mira's mother, and Asha Mira's mother, and Peelu Neelu, because that bond continued.
Sure.
Because of BBG.
Yeah.
Because BBG.
So they were kind of their kids before you and your brother and sister ever showed up. They were BBG's kids before.
They were like her kids.
Yeah.
For them, she was the mother. They did not even
That's right.
remember their mother.
That's right.
And only when they grew older did they realize that she is not the real mother.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened with Peelu and Neelu. Peelu's mother died when Peelu was very young. And Peelu thought that BBG was her mother.
Okay.
So BBG, with lots of tears in her eyes one day, said, I don't know how to do it. I don't want to break this little girl's heart, but I have explained to them sometime that I am not your mother.
Right.
I am like your mother, but I am not your mother. But Peelu Neelu always called her mummy.
Right.
So anyway, because their own mother had died. It's the same story,
Yeah, different generation. Wow.
Yeah. So
What do you remember? I mean, you obviously weren't there, but what do you remember about her husband, meaning your father, BBG's husband?
I remember a lot.
Yeah.
Well, as a child.
So what was his name? Is that?
Achar Singh.
That's right, Achar Singh.
Achar.
Right.
He was a lawyer.
Yeah.
His father was Jaswant Singh Gujral, whom you have met, my grandfather.
Yeah.
But his grandfather was a very, 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 I'm saying 3 times, rich landowner in Punjab. And how he became that landowner is that the British at some stage decided to develop the land in that area for agricultural purposes. There was that as the population grew. So what they did, they issued some kind of a edict that on such and such a date, all those who want to occupy the land should collect there after paying some fees, and then they could go around their horse or anyway, whatever perimeter they could cover would become their land.
Yeah.
And he was supposedly a very strong and a fast person. His name was Jawahar. And his memory and his stories were all over Punjab when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, because not only my mother, but other relatives and other people who were not related, they used to tell me with great, whenever they saw me as a little child, they would sit down and start telling me about my grandfather.
So is this then the
great-grandfather?
Is this the grandfather or great-grandfather then that then also lost a lot of that land or all of it?